introduction. It really is a pleasure to be with you in Southend today. So I'm the Member of Parliament for Halifax, which actually couldn't be any more inland, tucked in there in West Yorkshire in the north. But I am a member of the Shadow DEFRA team and I have responsibilities for coastal communities. So we've been here today meeting with members of the community, business community, from schools, from right across all the different sectors, from charities, because what's really important for us as we really start to develop our policies that are going to deliver for people right across this country in a way that they've just not felt the benefits of policies that work for them for so long now. We are launching consultations today around coastal communities and what do we really need to deliver so that there are opportunities back for our young people, for our older people in coastal communities up and down the country. But we're launching a fishing consultation as well. As we go through those Brexit negotiations, you'll appreciate that fisheries is one of those quite complicated areas that we're really going to have to unravel in a way that puts sustainability, environmental protections back, but again delivers in a way for our coastal communities that at the moment we're not seeing that happening. The really important bit about policy development in the Labour Party is that we listen to you and we get out and we speak to real people who are used to working in those sectors, living in those communities, and that forms the very bedrock of our policy and what we are trying to achieve. So it's been fantastic to be here and have the opportunity to listen to you. But I know actually you're not really here to listen to me, and so without any further ado, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce the Leader of the Opposition and the next Prime Minister, Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you very much for welcoming Holly and myself here today. Holly's just been talking to you, and the purpose of our visit is part of our policy development we're doing all around the country, where we're looking into how we develop our ideas on a fair and just economy, how we look at seaside towns and the levels of opportunity and the levels of poverty and distress that are there, and how we carry forward what we were doing in the general election, which is essentially a message of hope and opportunity that we will bring by making those that don't pay tax pay their tax and investing in a society that works for all. So we've just had a very good discussion with a number of local people from different communities, businesses, colleges, schools, unions, and so on, about opportunities and possibilities in Southend. And in the general election in this constituency, you almost halved the Tory majority. Absolute congratulations on doing that. That wasn't done by staying at home. You did that because you went out there and did that campaigning and got that contact rate with the local community. And in the next general election, let's take it a stage further. You're selecting a candidate at the moment, and I will be on the phone immediately that candidate is selected to congratulate them on their selection as the candidate, and then we'll be here again campaigning with you. Because if we're to win a general election, whenever it may come, next year, year after, or whenever, we're ready for it. We are not going to win it just in the 3 weeks of the campaign by voter identification. That is crucial and important, of course. We're going to win it because we will have engaged communities, engaged people, given people some hope that we are part of their community and that we want to take it forward to win an election on policies that actually work for people all over the country. In the general election campaign, we started off, no secret about that, in quite a difficult place. We produced a manifesto that was transformative for the many, not the few. And in that manifesto, a lot of people suddenly saw something of their own lives and the possibility of how their lives could be transformed and made different and better. And we got the biggest increase in Labour vote since 1945. We got the biggest increase for a long time. We got an increase in the number of constituencies we won, and we got the highest vote in England since 1970. But sadly, it wasn't quite enough. And so we now have a government that's in office and on notice. It's done a deal with the DUP and offered them £1 billion. They seem to have plenty of money for those kind of deals. And they're not doing terribly well, to the extent that when we put up opposition motions in Parliament, as we have, on European Union nationals, on universal credit, on pay cap, NHS funding, they don't even turn up to vote. They just say, well, it's an opposition motion, therefore it doesn't matter. You cannot have a government that holds Parliament in so little regard, virtually in contempt. You have to have a parliamentary process and a democracy that works. We're in government, we would expect to be held to account by Parliament. That is what the system is. We understand democracy. I'm not sure they do. Our manifesto also offered big hopes for young people. And the numbers of young people that engaged in the election was quite incredible. 2 million more people registered to vote in the first 3 weeks of the campaign. They were all over the country. Disproportionately, the largest numbers were in London and Bristol and some other big cities. But I want to say a big thank you to everyone who got involved in voter registration, on social media, on door knocking, in colleges and workplaces. And also a huge thank you to the many artists and outriders who came to help us. A big thank you to Stormzy and others for endorsing the need for voter registration. It made a very big difference in the election. But we have to go further and ensure that we are offering real hope to the young people of this country. And it was a big call and a big ask, but we decided that we would make this bold step of saying that we want an education service, a national education service that takes the idea of education being a commodity out of the equation and instead says, as we do with other public services like health, education should be a right for all of our people at all times in their lives. So we start with the preschool. All children should get an opportunity for nursery places from the age of 2 onwards. It was those very, very important, very early years where children learn from each other, to play together, to understand each other. Equips them for so much more later in life. We cannot have a country where your life chances, your chances of learning a skill or going to university are in effect decided by the postcode of where you were born. Every child deserves the best we can offer them, and we are determined that we will fund preschool and school education properly, and that in order to help the development of all children, we will introduce what we're calling a pupil arts premium, which will be a ring-fence sum of money to every school for every child to get a chance to learn a musical instrument, to develop their artistic skills, and encourage the creativity that's there in all of us. College and university education, as well as adult education, and young people approaching school leaving age, we will do a number of things. One, we'll return the educational maintenance allowance to encourage young people to stay on in education. Secondly, we will abolish college fees, university fees, and adult education fees. It is an expensive offer, we know that, so we made that view that education should be there for all people, for all times in their lives. That actually is where our movement was founded from. If you read the works of people in the mid-19th century and onwards, early socialists the work they were doing was all about empowering people through education. It's been the very core of the Labour movement's values. And I think the late, great Jenny Lee and the work she did in the 1960s Labour government to develop both the Arts Council, the funding of arts and community, but also the Open University is an example of that. And it breaks my heart when I see the way in which so much of our education system is underfunded, local education authorities undervalued, and adult education in some parts of the country almost completely destroyed. We will be a government that puts resources into those areas. But we'll also be a government that recognises we have to invest far more, evenly and fairly, across the country in infrastructure, railways, in transport improvements, in broadband infrastructure, but also in cutting-edge, sustainable technology investment and developments in coastal communities like Southend, but there are many more around the country where we want that diversity of employment and good quality employment. It can't be right that a disproportionate amount of transport infrastructure investment goes into London, too little goes into areas beyond London, particularly in the northeast, northwest and far southwest. And it can't be right that we have such a massive range of employment opportunities and wage levels. The lowest wages in the whole country are paid in Devon and Cornwall. The least level of government spending goes into the East Midlands. We have these massive discrepancies around the country, which we are determined to deal with. So we have a huge number of issues on our plate, which do involve an economic growth, of course. They do involve seriously challenging Trump and others on environmental sustainability. They do involve a whole lot of very radical decisions that we're going to have to make in government. And so whenever this election comes, whenever this government finally gives up the ghost, we've got to be ready for it, able to do it, and above all, as a movement, remember, you're not just electing people into Parliament and electing people into government. What we're doing as a party and a movement is saying it's our government, it's our chance, it's our opportunity, and we're going to have to campaign very hard to get all those things done and through. That's why we're together in the Labour Party. That's why we're saying to people, listen, we don't have to live in a society of such grotesque inequality. There doesn't have to be homeless people begging for a night shelter and sleeping on our streets. There doesn't have to be nurses using food banks in order to survive. It doesn't have to be that so many young people go through a mental health crisis and can't find anybody to help them. Our principles of everybody matters. Our principles of communities doing things together are what brings us together as a movement. We've got difficult negotiations over Brexit, where we want to maintain trade access and relationship with the European Union and all the environmental, consumer and workers' rights protections that we've got through that. We're determined to keep all of those. And in the world, be an agency and a pressure for good quality, real human rights for everybody all around the world. That will be the centre of what we're trying to do. I'm very proud to lead the party, which now has well over 500,000 members, coming up towards 600,000 members. And last weekend, we organised 600 campaign day events all over the country. And we're going to be doing more of those because, as I started with and I'll finish with, elections are won by the work that's done long time before and that sense of community we have. So I urge you, take the manifesto, look at it, agree with it, disagree with it, fine. Put your ideas forward on how we can develop the education service, the care service, the health service, industrial development, environmental sustainability, but also take that conversation out into all of our communities so that those people that at an estate meeting put forward their views on how we develop a housing policy will see, oh, that turned up in their manifesto. Labour is my party because that party is part of my life and my community. That's the strength that will take us forward to win an election that's what we showed in the general election, that despite the lack of critical support, shall I say, from the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, the Sun, the Times, the Telegraph, and a number of other newspapers that didn't feel fit to report what we were doing, social media, our doorstep activity, and the broadcasting rules meant that an awful lot of people heard the Labour message for the first time. Let's make sure in the general election to come, everybody gets our message. And you know what? We're going to win it. Thank you very much.